This episode is sponsored by BioGlan MedLab. Feeling tense, dealing with mild muscle cramps, or finding it hard to switch off at night? Try BioGlan MedLab MG Optima Relax tablets. With high absorption magnesium glycinate and clinically trialed alpha wave L-theanine, it helps relax muscles, calm the mind, and support focus during the day. Alpha wave L-theanine has been shown to calm the mind in 3 hours. Learn more at bioglanmedlab.com.au. Always read the label and follow the directions for use.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Let's Talk Natural Medicine, our Legend series. And I am joined by Christine Pope, who is a naturopath, nutritionist, and a life member of the Australian Traditional Medicine Society with nearly 2 decades of service to natural medicine. And it's going to be a really interesting journey. Christine's journey began with banking. And how does a banker end up being a natural medicine lover? I mean, that's going to be an interesting discussion. And it's taken it all the way to be a clinician, an educator, an advocate, and really a national leader. So looking forward to our conversation. Welcome to the program, Christine.
Thanks, Annie. And yeah, it actually is 20 years because I realized I set up clinic in January 2006. And
wow.
So I was like, yeah.
20 years this year. Amazing. So let's take it right back to there. 2006, you suddenly went, I'm going to set up my own clinic. But before that, how did you get into banking? Were you an accidental banker or did you have a moment?
Look, I was when I was looking at careers, I was looking at either commerce or chiropractic. And I know, that's quite a range. My dad was for a smallish investment bank at the time. And so I had holiday jobs there, and I'm quite math based, so I found a lot of that easy. And what used to happen was they'd get me in to do one job and then they'd realize that I could do other things. So, I was a 16-year-old who was doing bank reconciliations and that sort of thing when I was there to kind of, stamp a whole bunch of checks not negotiable. And so I was looking at these 2 careers, but I'd also had a really positive experience with natural medicine very early on with a chiropractor who my dad used to throw his back out every so often. And he'd be lying on the floor for 2 or 3 days until the painkillers and the anti-inflammatories kicked in, and then wandering around stiffly for a week. And our neighbour came over at the time. And I always remember because he lay down on the floor next to him and started talking about what was going on for him. And then he said, well, look, I'm a chiropractor and this is the sort of thing I help out with. And look, once Dad started seeing that guy, he never ended up like that again. So it was sort of like, oh.
But you didn't then choose chiropractic. So what happened then?
No,
how did you end up going naturo?
I was 17 years old and looking at a career and thinking, and I had got into university, and the course for chiropractic was only offered in Melbourne at the time. So it was a big move and it was a 5-year course. And I'd grown up in Melbourne and I was sick of the cold. So I was like...
I love what prompts your entire future. It's like, no, I can't do it because it's in the wrong state and I'm definitely going to make a move and I'm in a family and this is kind of like, well, I'm heading in this path now. So that's what you do. And I tell you what, for our listeners isn't that what many of us do? I mean, I certainly had that career path start as well. Absolutely fascinating. So did you love banking?
Look, I really enjoyed a lot of the time I spent in banking. There were a couple of times when I kind of went, oh my God, what am I doing in this organisation? But I'm sure anyone has had that experience. I actually started, I had a grad role with Citibank, which I think everyone who worked in banking would spend time at Citibank, and you'd either last 3 years or you'd be a lifer. There was no middle ground. And when I was there, it was in retrospect, it was an American organisation. So there were a lot of women in senior roles, there was a lot of diversity, and I thought nothing of it. And then I went to an Australian bank called the State Bank of New South Wales and was like, oh my God, there are people here wearing brown cardigans and, I was one of two women in 52 general managers at my level. And
Wow.
it was just like, oh my, it was this massive shock to the system that, yes, we may be going through university at the same rate as men, but things haven't changed that much.
On management statistics,
Yeah.
rather sad.
Mm.
So you ended up making the big decision. You then became a naturopath and a nutritionist.
Yep.
And you are now, if you look at your current day practice, you're specializing in, or you're all things social say, Christine Pope is about aging outrageously
I
and
know.
and autoimmune care, if I summarize kind of in that way.
Autoimmune and cancer is probably
And
the other.
cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, when you think about it, look, I think a lot of them, it's chronic disease, and, one in three people now will experience cancer at some point in their lives, which is truly terrifying. But we are in a
Mm,
country where, let's be honest, I think most people know someone who's had skin cancer or have had cancer, taken off at an early stage if they're
true.
monitoring.
True. So
Mm.
was that your focus 20 years ago when you set up that
No.
clinic in 2006? What has the journey been like over 2006 when you started? What was your dream? You're all excited. You're in this new profession. You've gone and studied up and now this is your future to the journey to where you are today.
So look, when I started, I was actually qualified as a homeopath and a nutritionist. And that was because when I started studying in 2000, and I was fortunate enough to actually start studying part-time, or in 2001, because I could work part-time at the organisation I was at the time, which is pretty unusual. So I had a year to kind of figure out, is this what I want to do?
Mm,
But I didn't enroll in naturopathy at the time because you had to do massage as well. And I was like late 30s. I had a couple of great massage therapists. I really didn't think that was something I would be able to do, or physically able to do at the time.
mm,
And so I went, okay, well, what are the things that I really enjoy? And that was homeopathy, which I found worked really well for me. And once I started studying homeopathy, it was like you also did first year nutrition, and it was like this is just like if you don't sort out their diet, fundamentally,
mm,
70% problems are going to reoccur. You can't just give them a lovely homeopathic medicine and everything be resolved. You need to sort out, basically we are what we eat, and you know
yes.
you need to sort that out as well. So I really enjoyed studying homeopathy and nutrition because I think it wasn't as big a course load as full-time naturopathy, but it also really, homeopathy really is very deep into case taking and getting the information about what's going on for someone very specific way. And I
Mm,
think it actually fed really well into my analytical brain. And at the time I was studying, was we were starting to see the first computer programs. Because the thing is with homeopathy is you look up each symptom and then you look at all the remedies that are in that symptom and then you pull them. So, you're basically
mm,
running a big spreadsheet. The fact that
yes.
someone actually came up with a program to do that, I think was a game changer, because I'm not sure I would have lasted in the industry without it. Because I don't have that sort of like, it's really interesting. A lot of the really are the gurus in our industry, they have these amazing memories, and
Mm,
they can just pull out all this stuff about a remedy. Whereas my brain doesn't think like that. I need to understand how it would look and then match that to the person picture in front of me.
mm,
So,
mm.
I found that studying the homeopathy really interesting, and I think the nutrition worked really well in hand with that. Now, a bit later, I did go on and upgrade into naturopathy because a lot of the supplements I was using had herbs in them, and I'm like, I'm the sort of person that needs to know, okay, what are the vitamins and minerals doing? What are the herbs doing? And also, frankly, it is so much easier telling people you're a naturopath. Like it just, well,
Wow.
homeopath people have some very interesting notions of. And I always remember there was this another homeopath who was further up the North Shore than I was, and she used to grow her own rose essences, and she had this beautiful, flowing hair and curls and everything else. And I just remember someone coming into me and saying, "Oh, I came to see you because you look practical." So,
Wow.
where I thought she was
Classic.
probably more at the spiritual, intuitive end of the spectrum. So, it really was an interesting process going through that education. And the other question you asked me about was, did I start with aging outrageously? And no,
Mm,
I didn't, because
mm.
where I had used homeopathy a lot was with young kids, and that was what had really changed my view about natural medicine. I'd gone through the standard, thing you do as a new parent, where every sniffle you're on the phone to the doctor because you're paranoid, and
Yeah.
I mean, you're a nurse, so you know what those mothers are like.
Hmm.
And I was clearly that mother, but also scary because I was working in banking. So, it was like, I need a solution. I need it now. And my mother had referred me to a naturopath, who was also a homeopath. And I started using some of the remedies. And I always remembered, I had my 3-year-old woke up with a big red inflamed ear at 1 o'clock in the morning, which would normally have meant another trip to the 24-hour clinic, which is always so special, particularly when you're working full time. It's just awesome. You show up next day going, oh. And my homeopath had heard about this before, so he left me with a remedy called belladonna. And look, I wasn't really expecting a lot from it, but I gave him a dose of the belladonna and he settled down. I gave him another dose. He turned over and went back to sleep. And of course, the right thing for me to do at that point would have been to go back to sleep myself. But of course, being a mother, I stayed awake for a couple of hours waiting for him to twitch. It's like,
Yes.
when are we getting in the car and going? And at that point, I went, wow, that was quite a difference. And look, he had probably one more ear infection after that. And then it actually didn't recur. So
Mm.
it's like, okay, well, there's something going on here, what is it and what else can I use homeopathy for? So in my clinical practice, I started by running first aid workshops for parents
Hmm.
in using homeopathy. And my initial workshops were like a 2-3 hour session. I think it was a couple of hours 3 weeks in a row. So it was a lot of content. And I always remember my first group because it was quite small and we had it in the yoga room, which was the space we had available. And I had my chairs out, and I think there were half a dozen people and a 5-month-old baby. So that was the first first baby I got to treat. And there were two older women in the room, and I could just see them being desperate to get their hands on the baby. So the baby spent a lot of
Oh,
time being cuddled and passed around.
that is so gorgeous. And I love that way that you can have, careers these days
Yeah.
around, you've got a family, other people have got families, and you've just, you can do what's right for that time. So it's not surprising that as you were a young mum, that you
Mm.
also attracted, you're experiencing these things. It's kind of like in your heart, it's what you do. You're therefore surrounded by people who know that and would relate to you. And then as we grow through our life, it's not
Yeah.
surprising now. You're like going, yes, where you are at the moment is you're definitely sort of in that space of people who are similar ages, and then now grappling with the realities of those statistics that you shared before, which are actually quite high, 1 in 3, quite incredible. So you were very focused and obviously have this heart love for homeopathy, but then you then went, I am going to go back and become a naturopath as well. Was that just to add to the toolkit? It was that you go, okay, I'll just do a bit of that massage in it just to get the qualification. Did it make you feel like you could become more of a rounded practitioner? Or because that's a big thing to go back and do a whole
Mm.
extra course.
Well, the thing is, I was actually teaching it. I was approached to teach homeopathy in aged care. And so because I was teaching there, it was they made it very financially worthwhile for the teachers to do more education. And
Right.
so, but also because with the homeopathy nutrition, I was actually studying with the naturopaths. It was only that I wasn't doing herbal medicine and a few of the other subjects. So I didn't have to do a whole course on top of it. I had to do like a stream. So, and I'd already done first year of herbal medicine because of the fact that it was in so many of the supplements I was using. And so I just added on those pieces. But the thing that freaked out a few people was, so I've been head of nutritional medicine and homeopathy at this college for a couple of years. And so I show up in my student clinic, and let me tell you, I wasn't the oldest person in that clinic at the time. It was quite a spread. And I show up in my student clinic for my additional hours for naturopathy because the other quals I'd done, you needed like 250 hours of clinic, and naturopathy, you needed 400. And they're all like, what are you doing here? Like, these are
You're the teacher.
Yeah, I know. Well, one of the supervisors was someone I'd hired. So she was like,
hey, it's lifelong learning. We're
yeah,
all
lifelong learning. And look, I really wanted to be in and have that experience of practicing as a herbalist and actually getting the liquid herbs and mixing them up. That was my favorite experience. We'd all go out the back. We had this amazingly large dispensary because, all the herbal medicine companies were keen for nature care to be using as much as possible. And we had everything. And so, we'd all just go out there and look and open the bottles and have that experience and also mix things up and try them on ourselves. And so that was something I didn't want to miss out on. And I did really enjoy the terms of student clinic I did. However, I did find that on occasion the supervisors would go, oh, this is a homeopathic case. Oh, Christine, you should be in the room while they're doing that one. It's like, we'll just use you as an extra supervision. So, I did get a little bit more homeopathy clinic too. But, overall, I think the requirement was 400 hours between what I did with nutrition and homeopathy and then naturopathy. And also I'd done an external clinic for a year when I graduated because I felt like it was the only way to really, like there's a learning to be a practitioner and there's learning to be a clinician, and they're two really different things. And that was an invaluable experience. So Harvard Homeopathic Clinic would offer students the chance to come in and do like placements for 1 day a week for a year, well, as long as you wanted to do. And I clearly just hung around.
So you were the 1,000+ hour student going.
I think that's probably around 700 to 800 hours when I think about it. But particularly for homeopathy, what I had the advantage of is they had 3 different homeopaths working on the Friday. So I got to sit in with people who had very different ways of practicing. And that was really, really invaluable.
Well, I think that's one of the common trends of people sharing, particularly on this Legend series, actually, what you said there, Christine, that, a lot of new practitioners, there's such a transition from learning your craft to then entering practice. And I think it's so important that we do have legends such as yourself now and others mentoring others the same way as you were then mentored in that experience, because it's a really important step to be confident in your skill set, but also then be able to then go, okay, yeah, when I set up my practice in 2006, do I actually know that? I mean, you were probably helped out more because of at least you had a business background, sounds like from, background, but it's still different when you do it yourself, isn't it?
Yeah. If I'd done anything, I wish I'd done more about marketing and sales and marketing, because I came from a very analytical background. So every time I had to think about something to do with marketing, like an ad or something, I'd be putting it through the lens of, is this legally permissible? Can I say this? And I just wasn't very inspiring. So I was very glad when I was on the ATMS board working with Zadro, and I learned a lot about marketing and sales from working with them. But I also did a lot of other courses. And I was going to say, if I was setting up clinic now, what I wish I had gone and done was a lot more study on, how to set up and promote a practice, rather than just, I need to know about everything, so I'm going to do every courses out there and learn more and more and more about becoming a practitioner, but not actually have any clients in front of me. So,
Yes, very, very handy, which is why Australian Traditional Medicine Society do offer a transition to practice little day, and they also offer optimize your business for these sorts of reasons. Because it's overwhelming, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just kind of go, oh, well, I better do this, or someone else said something successful, but it's about applying it. Now, you've had this incredible 20-year journey, but in that journey, you've then obviously been an educator for 7 years over at Nature Care, but you've also then been on the Australian Traditional Medicine Society board for 10+ years. You were president of the board. You're also now deputy chair of the Council of Small Business Australia. So you're obviously a leadership type of woman. You love mentoring, giving back. Has that always been a part of you too, going, I just love encouraging or supporting the professions and fellow practitioners, or what's that leadership drive for you?
So look, when I was in banking, I was always in an area where we used to hire a lot of graduates. So I spent a lot of time supporting and mentoring them, and it was really interesting the difference between the guys and girls. But in retrospect, whereas with the women, it was like until they felt that they were, completely confident, they wouldn't put their hands up for the next role, the next job. So I spent quite a bit of time going, you know, yeah, put your hand up, lean in, I think is the terminology now.
Lean,
And
yes.
so I did spend a lot of time, and even after I had moved on or left banking, there was still a couple of people who would ring me and say, I'm looking at X or Y. Can I have a chat to you about it? Because often what you need is someone who's not invested in the situation to give you advice.
Mm.
Mm. And so I think all through my career, I have been involved in mentoring, with new graduates. It started with teaching them what you wanted them to do, and then backing off a bit, coaching, mentoring, etc. So I think that is always part of the process.
Mm.
With the role on the ATMS board, and I was actually on the Homeopathic Association, but it's funny, I always get recruited because they go, "Oh, you worked in banking, you must be financial," you know.
We need a treasurer.
We need a treasurer. And it's amazing how people think this is a really hard job. It's like, just get the right bookkeeper in there and get the right support and it's fine. But,
Exactly.
anyway. So look, I did get recruited because of my financial background often, but I have found a real interest in, because I think the thing is, it's like most of us as clinicians, one to one, at a point, we get frustrated with that.
Mm.
It's because there are so many people who need help. And for me, the frustration, I think the biggest frustration when I was on the ATMS board was the changes to rebates. And,
Mm.
just as I finished, the announcements started coming. And I remember someone telling me at the start of that journey when I was first going down to Canberra is that the work of advocacy is long and slow. And,
Yes.
it's like a glacial shift. And I was really expecting that, within 12 months we'd get a review, it'd get done, and we'd have rebates back. I had no idea that we would still be having the webinar we did on Monday, where we're looking at,
Yes.
8 years later, but at least we're very close now.
Mm. And that's the thing. It's when in this legend series, it's the people like yourself who, realize I'm part of that advocacy journey. And it's like you do all the work to set up the wedding and then don't go. Just kind of like, what? You've announced it the day after I finished or whatever. It's like, but you have to be okay with that, because it's those people who then just kept going to all of those meetings, that did those meetings in Canberra. And I know you're in Canberra this week with other things. It's actually just chipping away and putting things front of mind and just realizing that it is going to take a village and it's going to take a long time, but eventually you're steering that ship, in this time natural medicine, to achieve its goal, and you're part of that and you're part of the collective. And that is deeply rewarding when you're at this stage of your career and you must be looking back and go, yeah, like it didn't happen in 1 year. I can't believe I'm like 9 years later and I'm still waiting to dot those few I's. But in your lifetime, you would have been part of something quite huge.
And look, I think the thing was that whole process. I look back, it's like, okay, we went through, well, for me, I went through and learned, well, how do we get them to review the decision? And, we worked with other associations and collaborated on campaigns. I think ATMS was involved in two. One of them, I support natural medicine and I vote, and we had this massive letter writing campaign. And the other one was How Dare They? Which was a little bit more, but it got the message across. And working with other associations, we managed to get people to reconsider the decision to remove natural therapies from rebates.
Mm.
And, and then of course we had to do this massive review. So again, there was a collaborative exercise with researchers and everything else. But I have to say the thing that I remember most is we had this 178-page submission on the first tranche of the review, because they broke it into two sections, and which was summarised individual research papers that supported the use of those modalities. and we had it in a PDF, like a Word
Yeah.
document. And then it was like, oh no, no, right at the bottom, there was this thing that said we want it in an Excel spreadsheet. And
And you didn't have ChatGPT that could
oh
just go, can you please
no.
convert this to
No, you
Excel
know
and go,
what?
oh, here it is.
We had Peter Berryman. He went
Oh,
through spent the weekend reformatting everything so that it was able to be accepted.
wow.
And,
Wow.
there's just
Peter
those little
Berryman.
things like that. And then, Sandra Grace, who's on our board, was also involved in with some of the Southern Cross Uni researchers in helping us pull together this more enormous database, which actually confirms that natural medicine is very useful. It should be included in rebates. And don't get me started ranting.
I won't get you ranting, but I will get you to now focus in on a little bit more on your practice. So
Mm.
over those 20 years, you started and everyone is face to face in the practice. And then
Oh
now,
yeah.
now if you look at your business, you've developed online programs like Aging Outrageously or homeopathy and clinical practice. So has that been, is that just the modern consumer? You need to, do you love that blend? Is it, if you don't have that, people, wouldn't actually come to you now? Like, how has that space changed and how have you adapted to that space?
So I think, like a lot of people, through the COVID years, you learned that you had to be able to see people online.
Mm,
It was just, and my preference has always been seeing people, having people in front of me, because I think there's a lot of information you get out of that physical
mm,
assessment. But it doesn't need to be for every appointment. And I think I realized things have changed big time when one of my 82-year-old clients says, "Oh, I'm at home and I'm still waiting for, this tradesperson who was supposed to show up 3 hours ago. Can we just move to an online appointment?" And I thought, well, she's got her head around
mm.
it,
Good on you, Nana. I think that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
But I think the thing is, I also really, like, when I'd stopped teaching, I missed the teaching, but I didn't really miss the marking, and I didn't miss those aspects of it. So I look when people were talking about you should build an online program. It's like there's always these things in the industry where they go, you should all write a book, you should all do this. But I have to say, of all the things that were suggested, the thing that really attracted me was working with small groups. And I was looking at Aging Outrageously first up, which I personally think was my genius part of the inspiration, was coming up with a name.
Mhm.
But
Well
putting all,
done.
putting all the content together, which was basically reflected the journey I'd had, where I was looking at supporting a lot, because my clients had obviously got older with me and they were facing different issues and different challenges. But for me, the whole program was based around Dr. Dale Bredesen's work on dementia and Alzheimer's. And, I can just see, and, I'm down in Canberra today, so I've got a pretty clear view.
Hmm.
There's this tsunami of chronic disease coming at us. And well, I think for most clinicians, it's already here. And we need to find better ways to minimize the risks or actually reduce the possibility of these diseases occurring as much as
Mm.
possible. And for me, doing his course was actually because, well, one, it was in San Francisco, and let's be honest, I'd always wanted to go there. And two, it was the one client that you hadn't really been able to help very much,
Mm.
who was, you know, his family were like, oh, they'd given me information about him, but I have to say, for the first three consultations, I thought he was non-verbal. He did then speak a bit, but of course, he could speak more in the mornings, not the
Mm.
afternoons,
Mm.
because he was
Interesting.
in that Alzheimer's sundowner
Hmm.
pathway. And look, we did get some improvement in his mood, but I couldn't get the family to change anything with his diet because it was just too overwhelming for them. And the pity of it was, the sort of diet I wanted him to have was the sort of diet he was actually grown up with. Anyway, with that in mind, I was at a metagenics conference and I heard them talking. They had him on the program because they would always bring in 4 or 5 overseas speakers, and it would kind of be the thought leadership in what was happening in aging and dementia and that sort of stuff. And I just went, okay, what he's talking about is really sensible. So from his perspective, I mean, I actually think he spent 30 years learning how to be a naturopath, but he was looking at, as a researcher, finding the magic pill for Alzheimer's, the thing that's shut off the plaque forming in the brain. Like,
Yeah.
Surely there was, and for 30 years, there'd been all these hopes and then crashing, and, he'd been through that process. Anyway, he then pulled back and said he did a deep dive on the research about, well, what are all the things that we know trigger dementia and Alzheimer's? And, he put them together in the same, because it's an assault to the brain, basically. And, then he looked at, okay, well, what are the options for treating those sort of things? So one of the risks, and this is one that I had real trouble getting my own head around because of the timing when I studied, early menopause is a risk for women. So early withdrawal of estrogen. If it's within the normal cycle, it's not a problem. But for those women who have and for a lot of them, they were given full hysterectomies, they didn't leave the ovaries in, that sort of thing would happen. So that was a known risk. So he started looking at, well, okay, what's the thing that could make a difference? Now, because of where he came from, he was looking at bioidentical hormone therapy. So part of his protocol does include looking at bioidentical hormone therapy where it's needed, for that. But, the other things he was looking at, interesting big one that I actually have a separate program on, balancing blood sugar. So what they call glycotoxicity, so the ability of the brain to process glucose, because the brain really uses up a lot of glucose compared to its size. It uses probably 25%, but, it isn't 25% of our body.
Yeah.
So they're talking about, and now they're starting, 8 years later, they're starting to talk about Alzheimer's as diabetes type 3. So, he looked at 5 different areas and he talked about it as 36 different points of intervention. It's like you've got a leaky roof and what you want to do is plug as many holes in the roof as you can. But looking at it from the perspective of, there's kind of 5 main areas where the other ones are things like inflammation, infections, toxicity, and, the one that's not really easy to deal with is traumatic brain injuries, but, yeah.
Yeah.
So I took a lot of that. I mean, it's a very complex protocol. And what I've done with my programs is I've really basically reduced the complexity of it to make it easy for someone to apply themselves, because his protocol has come from a researcher who's like, I've got to do every test so that I can track every parameter. And it's like, yeah, do you really need to do every test, or do you just need to kind of track where your blood sugars are and your key cardiovascular risks? And, yes, it would be lovely if you could have a volumetric scan of the hippocampus to track how it's going. But while that's great for a research study, it's not actually
Not the average day.
What I want to know is that you can find your keys and, that you can find your words. So,
So an average week in your practice then, who are you mainly seeing? What's the most rewarding client, if you like?
I think the thing is, I work with a lot of women who, for some reason, are finding that they just don't have the energy or enthusiasm. Most people call it motivation, that they had 6 months, 12 months, 10 years ago. And I think seeing them come back to themselves and the lights go on is that is really rewarding. And I had one day in January where I think I had 3 different clients, and actually one of them was a bloke, but they were all doing a lot better. And in one case, it was because I put him on something to actually support an inflamed prostate. And so he wasn't getting up to pee 3 times a night. And so he was sleeping a lot better. And just,
That's life-changing.
I mean, sleep is one of the real healers, if you can.
It really is.
Yeah, if you can get a decent night's sleep. And I have to say, this hotel has the best beds because I slept really well last night.
I remember back to my early days when I was a mum of 5 young kiddies. I guess sleep deprivation is seriously is the torture. Oh my goodness.
Especially since you were twins and
twins twice. Oh my goodness. Anyway, today's about you. And so at this, just to close, what are you most proud of? You've had clinical, you've had educational, you've had leadership, incredible contributions over your career. Do you look back now and go, I'm most proud of certain things, or is it the combination?
Look, I think there's a couple of things that really stand out. I think the figuring out the advocacy and rebates is probably a real highlight for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, because I think I got to collaborate and work with so many people, and that was fantastic. I really do prefer working with a team. So, this was an area where I got to do that.
Mm.
And I think personally, I feel very proud of myself for getting my head around the tech and setting up the programs. And even prouder that I realized how much of a toll the tech was taking and I outsourced it to someone else.
Know what, you're at the end of your tether of that skill set. Well, you certainly built skills pretty extensively, Christine Pope, over your journey. You've got such an inquisitive mind, and you certainly are there for the long haul. You've done an incredible impact on the profession of natural therapy across Australia, and I think everyone should be, awarding you. Big claps for Christine on the the dedication that she has put to us. So thank you so much for sharing on Let's Talk Natural Medicine today.
You're very welcome.
And for those of you listening in, if you have not yet joined our community of people who love natural medicine, jump onto atms.com.au and click on friends, or just scan the QR code if you're watching on other platforms. We would love you to join us. It's free to join. You then get a little email in your inbox every 2 weeks. We will then be able to share blogs written by our clinical accredited trained practitioners. You'll also get recipes from a celebrity chef. You'll get links to these kind of podcasts and so much more. We're just starting a shop and things will be available to you, and little special treats. So come and join us. It's atms.com.au. Click on friends. We look forward to you joining our rapidly growing community of people who love natural medicine. Until next episode, stay well.
This episode of Let's Talk Natural Medicine is brought to you by BioGlan MedLab. Everyday stress, tension, or trouble switching off can impact how you feel and how well you sleep. BioGlan MedLab MG Optima Relax tablets combine high absorption magnesium glycinate with clinically trialled alpha wave L-theanine to support both body and mind. It helps relax muscles, calm the mind, and support emotional well-being and focus during the day and into the evening. And alpha wave L-theanine has been shown to calm the mind in 3 hours. Learn more at bioglanmedlab.com.au. Always read the label and follow the directions for use.